In this video, I want to show you how you can take a picture that means something to you and turn it into a personal painting that you can give as a gift or even hang up at home. This painting is for my granddaughter Vilma. She just loves her Aunt Hannah. These two crazy girls were sitting at my food truck one day, fooling around, and then I took a lot of pictures. I then built a background on a canvas on which I then projected the image. From the image I have removed the background and then I have edited it into a shadow image that I can draw after when it is projected onto my canvas. This projector I'm using is costing no more than about $120, and it's a great tool that gives me a fantasillion opportunities to create amazing personal paintings. Let's get started painting personal paintings. Here is what you need: some kitchen sponges, some stencils, an IT projector, acrylic paint, a canvas, some brushes, a Posca pen, and the image you want to paint. To get some exciting effects in my background, I start here by making some dots in one side of my canvas. I dab with a kitchen sponge where I have taken most of the color off again so that it is semi-dry. It is important that there is not too much paint on, because then it will just slip through my stencil and then I do not have dots but stains. I have a lot of stencils and I think they are so cool to work with, as you can quickly get some cool results. I have a machine so that I can cut them myself, and as you get better and better at painting and seeing the possibilities in these techniques as I teach you, then it might also be a good idea for you, as they can well be a little expensive. But otherwise, I would recommend you to buy a lot of different ones that you can play with. Maybe see if you can find some used ones. I used regular black acrylic paint here, which is then partially painted over again. That is why I do not pay much attention to what I am doing. I do not want a straight edge, and therefore I have not covered off with masking tape. I just dab here and there. Now my dots are dry, and now I need to cover them a little bit so that they get into the background and become less visible. I strive to create a Photoshop effect on my paintings so that those who look at them think, how did she make that? They may have doubts about whether it is a painting or a print. It's pretty cool to be able to tell people that you've painted this by hand. Most people will be very surprised by it. I use titanium white to get a covering effect. Here you must pay special attention to the fact that some of the colors you may paint with later on also contain white and therefore also have a covering effect. Therefore, I do not put too much on, as my experience tells me that they often disappear completely when I later use tinted colors. In the transition between the dots and the white background, I lay a slightly thicker layer of paint. I let the first layer dry, and then I give it one more layer so that it looks like my dots come out of a mist. That is a soft and smooth transition between the effect and the rest of the canvas. I run my sponge in small circles, and I also dab a little bit with it. That is to get a slightly more rustic surface. That way it will be the nicest transition, I think. Now you just have to keep going until you are satisfied with the result and until you think it looks really nice. If it have to have a third layer, then you just give it one more layer. I did that here. I do not want you to be able to see in any way the transition between the dots and the rest of the white background. In the next video, I start working my colors into my background. Now I'm going to build up my background with these beautiful colors. As you can see, the yellow I use here has no opacity, and therefore I'm not worried about my dots disappearing completely. The slightly darker yellow has a little bit more opacity, so I will start with that in the area outside my dots. If you want more opacity in your colors, you can always throw in a blob of titanium white next to the color and then mix that in. Then it covers better. I start with my third yellow color all the way out on the other side, and then I work it in towards the middle. My transition here was not quite as I wanted it to be, as there is not enough wet yellow color to work them together. There should probably have been a little more of the second color on, so that the two colors would work better together, wet in wet. I try to save it by making a stripe of the lighter yellow and again working it together. If you get transitions you cannot fix, then you can always camouflage it with effects from stencils. Or you can work more layers on when the first layer has dried up. Practice makes perfect, and even though I have painted for many years, it can still tease me sometimes. Just keep going until you are happy with your transition. Now it's time to make some effects in my background. Here I have chosen to bring some of the effect from my background into the front. That's why it's the same stencil. I like continuity. It's my plan to wash off some of the yellow color with a damp sponge, but it did not quite turn out that way. Since there is black paint on my stencil, it spreads when the moist sponge dissolves the color residue. So instead of making a lighter dot, I got a half dark dot instead. It's a little bit annoying, since that was not my plan, but I actually think it looks okay, so I choose that it's okay and continue. Alternatively, just wash your stencil or make sure that the paint residue on it is completely cured so that they do not spread. It can easily take 24 hours. To soften the dark spots a little, I take my dark yellow on my damp sponge so that I can put a thin layer of paint over them. Since I have sprayed a little water on the sponge, it dilutes the paint so that it becomes more transparent. Therefore, it does not seem of much, but a little bit of effect it has. I end up mixing a little bit of titanium white in my yellow, so it gets a little bit more opacity. So, now my wrong dots are put more into the background, so they are not as disturbing as they was before. Since this painting is for a little girl of 3 years, I have decided to make even more effects with an ABC stencil. I think it's fun to make several different effects on top of each other, so that the painting becomes exciting to explore. Therefore, I have found one of my many ABC stencils, and I now take the dark yellow and use as a color on the lighter yellow background. I only want you to be able to see the alphabet a bit, and therefore I do not use any wild contrast colors, but I will do that later. Maybe you're sitting right now and thinking, that's a weird alphabet stencil. But it's Danish, as I'm from Denmark, and therefore it contains the letters A, Ø and Å, which are letters we only have in this country. Now you've learned a little bit about Denmark. Most foreign people have a really hard time trying to pronounce those letters. You might try A, Ø and Å. Good luck! Now I just continue with my alphabet stencil. I do a little bit around on my canvas so that it fills my background well up with exciting effects. I mix a little different yellow and white colors. I think that helps to give a little bit of light in the background. Now I want a contrasting color in my background. Therefore I now take a third stencil, this time with old handwriting, a bit like if I wrote a declaration of love for my beloved child and granddaughter. The girls are so beautiful and sweet together, and my granddaughter really looks up to her aunt, who is a perfect role model for her. Okay, back to the picture. I probably just got a little bit carried away by the mood there. As I said, I want a little contrast into my image so it does not become too boring to look at. Therefore, I make a little bit of text here and there with a neon pink color. To spice it up even more, I subsequently make pink dots with another stencil where the dots vary in size. It is always an art in itself to find the balance in when one has gone too far. Less is sometimes more. But I think my picture can easily carry all that activity. Finally, I used the same stencil I started with to preserve the continuity of my painting. Now I want to project my girls over on my background. But as you can see here, there are some distractions that needs to be removed, as I do not want dots on the face of the people I am portraying. The ones in my daughter's forehead might even be allowed to stay or just be less visible, but the dots that are in little Vilma's eye will be way too disturbing, so we cannot see it's her. There should be nothing that can steal focus other than them. It is the girls that is my story. That's why I'm now cleaning up my background. I work in thin semi-transparent layers. That way I can preserve some of the effects if I want to. I end up giving it 3 coats and almost covering it completely so that the girls step forward and come into total focus of my painting. I've cut a kitchen sponge into smaller pieces to better control it when I paint. Here I have also mixed a little water in the paint to make it a little transparent. I could have stopped after the first layer, as it has already helped a lot of the turmoil behind them. But I chose to give it a more opaque color. Here you can see layer by layer how the effect steps more and more into the background. When you think it looks the way that you want it to, then you can stand in front of your projector to check if it looks proper, if the layer is even, and we also do not want streaks in the white, which then disturbs instead of our background effects. Now I start drawing my picture of the girls onto my canvas. I just draw after the lines as I see them. It is the black I have to paint afterwards. If you have an image in a slightly poor resolution, which is pixelated, so you can see the small squares, then you have to round off your lines and not draw the small squares because it will be awful to have to paint it afterwards. It won't be nice to look at either. Here I have just made a small example of what I mean. As you can see, I draw from tip to tip on the small pixels. That way you get the best result. I love it when I get to the point where I just have to paint within the lines. It is really meditative and relaxing. And then I always look forward to seeing the final result. I look forward also to the day my little granddaughter unpacked the painting of her and her aunt. It's going to be epic. I hope I have inspired you and that you learned something. If you liked the video, then I would really be happy if you would make a review. It means a lot to me. And please upload your projects so others can be inspired by them. I look forward to seeing your results, which I will provide feedback on if you wish. Thank you for now and see you in the next video.